Yeah. Yes, to understand the purpose. So, nescience of material consciousness, that's samsara chakra. What was the second thing? That's I said, yeah, to help us attain Krishna. To, to revive Sanatan Dharma. Okay, that's one. Could say this is something related to duties and performing the challenges, but let's put it separately. Sanatan Dharma. Thank you. All of these are very important aspects of the Bhagavad Gita, and yes, when we study the Bhagavad Gita, these various points do come out, and especially when you study with the commentaries, then we learn so much from the Gita. Now, if we look at the Gita itself, the Gita is spoken at a particular point for a particular purpose. So, from the context of the Gita, what is its purpose? When was the Gita spoken? In the Kurukshetra battlefield. Why was it spoken? To remind Arjuna of his duties. Yes. Or rather, to resolve Arjuna's confusion about his duties. Arjuna was torn between two thoughts, to fight or to not fight. So, it was to resolve this dilemma. Should I fight or should I not fight? It was to resolve this dilemma that Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita. And this fight or not fight for Arjuna was associated with two dharmas. If he identifies himself primarily as a Kshatriya, then the Kshatriya dharma is to fight. But if he identifies himself as a member of the Kuru dynasty, of that particular Kula, then his Kula dharma should be, he should not fight. So, on both sides are dharma. Now, when there are two dharmas, two duties, pulling a person in not just two different but two opposite directions, then what does he do? And that's why in 2.7, Pruchhami Tvam Dharma Sammudha Cheta. So, we have so many dharmas, but what is dharma fundamentally? That is the question that begins the Bhagavad Gita. I want to know what is dharma. So from now, dharma can mean religion, dharma can mean duty. Those are all valid meanings of dharma. But in the context of the Gita, the way Krishna explains it, Krishna talks about dharma as the most meaningful activity. That life puts us in situations where there are no good choices for us. Not fighting was a terrible thing because people like the Kauravas would not only rule the kingdom but exploit citizens because they were exploited. But fighting means killing. So that was the problem. So when we have no good options, what do? The most meaningful activity. So essentially, the Gita, from the context of Arjuna Krishna conversation, the Gita is basically about decision making. On what basis do we make decisions? Now consider, say, if you are a parent and you are a professional, maybe working in IT, and then your child is having some school event. Hare Krishna. So, the child is having a school event, and then at that time your boss says that you have to stay on today and work overtime. Now, what do? Now, do you identify yourself as a professional and stay for the job, or do you identify yourself first as a parent and say, no, I have to go there. I have to go to my child's event. Now, we say it depends, which is more important. But it is not just which activity is more important, it goes back to which role do we consider more important. Is my role as a parent more important, or is my role as a professional more important? So now, there are no easy answers to this. So similarly for Arjuna, that is the question. He has two roles. and which role is more important? So, to answer this question, what Krishna does is, Krishna goes deep down. Krishna says we have many roles in the world. We may have roles based on our roles, or we have identities associated with the roles. We have many identities, and these we can call as functional identities. These can be based on our job, these can be based on our relationships, these can be based on our gender, these can be based on our nationality. So we have many functional identities. I can be a mother or a father. I can be an IT engineer or an IT software engineer or a doctor or a lawyer. I can be a middle-aged person, a young person. I might be an elderly person. So we have many different identities. And Krishna says, before you can decide what is the right thing to do, first you need to know who you are. And below all our various identities is our fundamental identity. And that fundamental identity is that we are Atma. We are souls and we are parts of Krishna. We are the Mamaivamsho Jivaloki. We are the Amsha of Krishna. Once we ground ourselves in our identity, then we decide, okay, then Arjuna has to decide whether his membership of the Kuru dynasty is more important way to ground himself in that identity, or is it the way that he identifies himself as Kshatriya and he fights. So from this fundamental identity, we may choose to identify with one particular role or another particular role or a third role. It's not that those roles are to be minimized and neglected, but there is something deeper to us beyond our roles. And that's why Krishna starts by talking about the Atma. Now, I cannot go into the technical flow of the Gita at this point, because that would be a separate class. But basically, what Krishna does is that Krishna doesn't start off, or the Gita doesn't start off by Krishna deciding that, okay, I'm going to teach about Karma Yoga and I'm going to, or Bhakti Yoga and this and that. Krishna doesn't start off by thinking that, okay, now today in this class, I'm going to talk about 5 topics. Like we have 5 topics of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna doesn't start off that way. There's a natural conversation between them. And in the conversation, as topics come up, Krishna addresses those topics. And as the questions come up, Krishna addresses those questions. And Krishna has his own thought flow that goes forward. So, in the first 6 chapters, essentially what is happening? So this is the big picture of the Gita. And basically Arjuna is associating fighting and not fighting with 2 options. The path of renunciation and then there is the path of, what is the other thing? The path of action. And Arjuna is thinking that the path of renunciation is better than the path of action. And therefore he's thinking, if I want to renounce the world, I don't want to have anything like a kingdom, then why should I be fighting? And Krishna tells Arjuna, things are not that simple. Why? Because he says these can be divided into multiple levels. That when we talk about renunciation, there can be mature renunciation or there can be premature renunciation. So, if somebody renounces because they're just fed up of things, then that is not really going to help them grow spiritually. When I was in Pune about 20 years ago, one young boy came to our temple and he said, what is the process for joining in the temple as a brahmachari? I said, okay. Now, I had not seen that boy come very regularly. He didn't seem to be a very serious devotee. I said, okay, so you want to join as a brahmachari? He said, yeah, by Sunday I'll be deciding. Okay. I asked him, what is going to happen on Sunday? He said, I have proposed to a girl. If she says no, I'll become a brahmachari. Now, frustration in the relationship is not the qualification for renunciation. Isn't it? So, that is, okay, frustration everybody gets. But there's a fundamental difference between frustration and renunciation. So premature renunciation is where there is, what is the difference between say frustration and renunciation? See, generally we have the desire for something and we have the ability for something. Okay, I want to become wealthy. Everybody has the desire to become wealthy. But there's some ability, there's a marketable talent. So generally, frustration is when the desire is there but the ability is not there. Like this person wants to have a relationship but it's not working out.
Negative attachment.
Yeah, it's actually internally still it is there. I want it but I'm not able to get it. But renunciation is when the ability is there but the desire is not there. I can do it if I want, but I want something higher in my life. So the two are not the same. So that's why simply someone renouncing the world is not enough. And Krishna, this premature renunciation, he very strongly critiques this. Especially in 3.3 to 3.8, he says this is not what is to be done. So simply thinking, oh, I'll renounce the world. Why are you renouncing? That is important. So just as in renunciation there are levels, similarly Krishna says in action also there are levels. So there could be action which is vikarma. I'll come to Sanskrit term later, but let's understand the conceptual classification first. Yeah? Yeah, okay. Okay, vikarma. Oh, now some vikarma is here. Okay. So, basically, there could be irresponsible action. So, irresponsible action could be various kinds. It could be unethical action. It could be, so irresponsible action could mean that a person is supposed to do some work and they just don't do it. So, or it could mean that a student is supposed to get marks, but they just don't study for the exam. Or it could mean they cheat and try to get the marks. It could be various things. This person is being irresponsible. Then there could be, so this is broadly vikarma. Vikarma is a big category, but irresponsible action we could say. Now, where a person is not even doing their duty, but somehow trying to get a shortcut to the results. Then there is attached action. Now, attached action means a person does the action, but they're completely fixated on the results. Okay, I'm studying, I want the marks. I'm having a job, I'm doing it just for the money. There's no higher sense of meaning over there. And then Krishna says there is detached action. So, now irresponsible action or immoral action, that if we consider from the overall perspective of the Gita, Krishna definitely condemns premature action. That irresponsible action is vikarma, unethical action, action driven only by short-term gains. He says no, don't do that. Then after this, then Krishna goes into various paths. So we could say attached action. What is the Sanskrit term for that? Karma kanda. Good. Now detached action, nishkam karma. So in terms of paths, detached action can be karma yoga. And interestingly, in detached action, Krishna says, bhakti yoga also falls in detached action. Because one is doing action, one is active. And in mature renunciation, Krishna says there are two things. There is dhyan yoga and then there is bhakti yoga. So, Krishna basically shows Arjuna that things are much more complex than what he thought. He thought, okay, I want to renounce the world, that's good. Krishna says, no. Why you are renouncing is important. And why you are engaging with the world is also important. So, if premature renunciation, irresponsible action, these two are eliminated right in the beginning. Then, Krishna talks about karma kanda. Does he recommend that? No. It's certainly better than irresponsible action. It's even better than premature renunciation. No action would mean premature. One is just giving up duty. That is no action. So it is better, but still, in terms of hierarchy, we could say that Krishna, let's put ticks. He said let's put it to question mark. Krishna says, doesn't condemn it, but he says this is definitely not the best. Now, among mature renunciation and detached action, which does Krishna recommend? Yes. So mature renunciation, Krishna says, is good, but detached action is better. So now, why is this? It's specifically at one level in the context of the Gita. Krishna wants Arjuna to perform his duty. That is dharma to be established in the world. Order to be established. Arjuna has an important role to play in that. And Krishna wants Arjuna to do that. So basically, over a period of time, mature renunciation is not Bhakti Yoga here. It is Jnana Yoga here, So now, Krishna, he talks about these various paths during the flow of the Gita. He doesn't really focus too much on each of these paths. It's not that Krishna gives a definition of each path, because it's a conversation, natural flowing conversation. So overall, I'll just give a quick overview. Krishna says detached action is better than mature renunciation. Now he says Jnana Yoga and Dhyana Yoga both are good, but Karma Yoga is better. And then he says Bhakti Yoga is the best. So that comes right in the 18th chapter. He says, Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam. Just surrender to me. So this is the overall picture of the Gita. What happens in the Gita? Krishna goes through various analytical frames, and he says that you work, but work not just thinking that I don't want to be entangled in the world. Work because Krishna has a plan for the world, and I can be a part of Krishna's plan. So I work not so that I get the results and I become famous and powerful. I work so that I can be an agent of change in the world. Krishna is the well-wisher of everyone, and as a servant of Krishna, I want to be a well-wisher. I want to act to do good in the world. So that is the overall message of the Gita. Now, in terms of the flow, how we come to the 12th chapter is that Krishna let's keep it simpler first. From chapters 1 to 6. Okay, yes please.
In the mature renunciation part, which one was considered to be the better of the two? Was it the Jnana Yoga or the Jnana?
Well, Krishna says both are good. Nishreyasa karavu bhav. Krishna doesn't really differentiate between the two of them too much. Because for Krishna, both of them are good, but right now you act in the world. So what Krishna essentially says is that even if you are actually detached enough to renounce the world, you can embrace mature renunciation, but still if you act in the world with detachment, you can set a good example for society. So for example, suppose somebody is a doctor and they have earned enough money or they have no interest in money, they could just retire. And maybe they could practice spirituality or whatever they could do. But if they stay in their profession and then they work without craving for too much money, they actually work with a service attitude, they care for patients, and if that person is a senior doctor, when younger doctors will see that, what will they think? Oh, I want to become like this. So their renunciation can inspire also. But their engagement in the world can inspire more people. Because if somebody is detached, then it's easier for them to act with values. See, whenever we are attached to something, then that attachment can erode our values. It doesn't have to, but it can. So that's the role of setting an example. Okay. So at one level, what Krishna does in the first 6 chapters is, Krishna starts with Karma Yoga, that's second chapter to 5th chapter. he analyzes Karma Yoga at different levels. Then in the 6th chapter, he talks about Dhyan Yoga. And the conclusion of the 6th chapter, he points to Bhakti Yoga. 6.46-47 is where he talks about Bhakti Yoga. Basically what he says is that the Dhyan Yogi, by going through the process of yoga, will ultimately come to the level of remembering me within the heart. Yoginam api sarvesham madgatena antaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yuktatamo matah. Now when Krishna talks about Dhyan Yoga, he says, okay, you can practice Karma Yoga, and when you are mature in the practice of Karma Yoga, if you want, you can practice Dhyan Yoga. And then when we practice Dhyan Yoga, then eventually Krishna emphasizes Dhyan Yoga is not to be practiced immediately. First, one needs to acquire enough detachment. And the indirect indication to Arjuna is, right now you focus on Karma Yoga. But then he says you come to Bhakti Yoga. And then in the 6th chapter, when Krishna is describing Dhyan Yoga, Arjuna says this process is not practical for me. He says, because my mind is restless. Now Arjuna does not say the physical austerities of Dhyan Yoga are difficult. Oh, going to a forest and living in a jungle, or living on roots and shoots. That Arjuna has already done. He has lived in exile many times. He has performed austerities to satisfy the devatas and get some weapons. He has done all that. But it's more the mental aspect. Keeping the mind always calm. He says that's extremely difficult. And then this particular hierarchy which Krishna has said, Karma Yoga to Dhyan Yoga, through Dhyan Yoga to absorption in him. Krishna says, now I will teach you an alternative way. So the point where the 6th chapter ends is where the 7th chapter begins. 6th chapter ends with Madgatena Antaratmana. And inside me think of me always. And the 7th chapter begins with Mai Asakta Manaha. Make with mind attached to me, or making your mind attached to me. So essentially what Krishna is going to do in the next chapters is describe this is one path up and this is another path up. And this is the path of Bhakti Yoga. The same perfection that can be attained through going through Karma Yoga, Dhyan Yoga, and ultimately coming to the level of absorption in God, that same perfection can be attained in another way. And this is almost like a gradual staircase way. This is more like an elevator way. And this is what is described from chapters 7 to 12. Now, in chapters 7 to 12, essentially, Krishna tells Arjuna how you can fix your mind on me. Krishna tells how he pervades all of existence. How, if you remember him at the time of death, you'll attain him. How, actually, he is... his devotion to him is the easiest way. Patram Pushpam Phalam. All that came in 9th chapter. Then the 10th chapter he says, how you can remember me even in this world. That is the Vibhuti Yoga. The idea is this whole, if you consider chapters 7 to 12, it's focused on remembrance of Krishna, because that is a central element of bhakti. So 7th chapter talks about how Krishna is the essence of existence. This is where the example comes up that how Krishna is like the thread in the pearls, that how Krishna is the taste of water, and all those examples. Now the 8th chapter is the power of remembrance at death. You have to remember Krishna. Krishna says what we remember at the time of death, that's what we will attain. Again, the focus is, therefore remember Krishna. He says this world is temporary, but our relationship with Krishna is eternal. Therefore remember him. Then 9th chapter, he talks about the power of bhakti. The universality of bhakti, the simplicity of bhakti. About how, even by offering a fruit or a flower, we can please Krishna. How, even somebody who is fallen, that even those people, even they apichet sudurachar, even somebody has something wrong, still they can approach Krishna, still they can surrender to Krishna. That's the power of bhakti. And then the 10th chapter is remembrance in this world. That, okay, we have to remember God, but what does it mean? Just we go to temple and look at God all the time? Do we constantly chant the holy names? Well, Krishna says, not necessarily. When we look at the world, and when we see extraordinary things in the world, we see those extraordinary things as manifestations of God's opulence. Now, Arjuna will see during the battle many warriors with extraordinary abilities. Arjuna should see that their abilities come from Krishna. So basically, remembrance, the Gita says, remembrance of God, remembrance of Krishna, or we call Krishna consciousness. It can be done in broadly two ways. One is bring Krishna into our consciousness. That is where we hear about Krishna, we chant about Krishna, we worship Krishna. That's one standard way. That's what Krishna, for example, talks about in chapter 9. Now, after that, there is another way. So, that is bring what is in our consciousness to Krishna. That means, when we are in the world, there are things, say, if we see a big mountain, if we see a beautiful river, if we see a giant animal, if we see a powerful human being, if we somebody who's a genius, now these things are already in our consciousness. Krishna says that, see that their extraordinariness comes from me. And this is the theme of chapter 10, which is Vibhuti Yoga. So, for example, in today's world, many people are very much hooked to cricket. So now, if some cricket player has some extraordinary ability, extraordinary batting ability, extraordinary fielding ability, extraordinary bowling ability, well, their ability comes from God. So when we see that ability, we can see that, we can just think of this as entertainment, or we can say that that is actually an ability coming from God. So in this way, we can remember God in this world also. Now that doesn't mean we have to watch cricket to remember God. What it means is, if that is already there in our mind, then we can try to connect it with Krishna. So Krishna, this is how you can remember it. And then, how is this possible? Because Krishna says, the whole universe exists within me. And that is the 11th chapter. The Vishwarupa Darshan, there's the 11th chapter over here. It is that, it is a remembrance through vision that everything exists within Krishna. So, everything exists within Krishna. Now, this is significantly different from the 7th chapter. 7th chapter was, Krishna exists within everything. Krishna says, I am the taste of water. Krishna says, I am, like, if you consider if in a necklace, the string that is there, the string exists inside the necklace. So here it is, essence of existence means Krishna exists in everything. But here it is, everything exists inside Krishna. But both ways, we can remember Krishna in this world. And then we come to the 12th chapter, which is, so Krishna has said, Mai asakta manaha, make your mind attached to me. And he has provided various resources, various strategies for helping us to make our mind attached to him, to help us remember him. And then in the 12th chapter, the focus is on the holistic nature of bhakti. Now, bhakti is about remembrance of Krishna. The holistic nature of bhakti, how bhakti is the best process. So, now we are going to start the class. This is the background to the class till now. But hope this is sufficiently unclear to all of you. Yeah. So, is there any question about the flow? There are many questions, but any burning question? So now, in the 12th chapter, Krishna has just shown to Arjuna in the 11th chapter how his personal form. The 11th chapter ends with Krishna saying that, yes, this universal form is majestic. But even more special than the universal form is my two-handed form. The form that is in front of you. That is even more special. So then Arjuna's question here is that the personal form, the personal form is greater than. Does this look like a greater than sign? I'll just write greater than. So, is greater than the materially all-pervading form. Yeah, specifically, I'm using the materially all-pervading form is the universal form. So, but it's a material form because the universe is made of matter. Now, Arjuna has a question. There is a spiritually all-pervading reality. There is a spiritually all-pervading reality. So, what is the relationship of the personal form with that? That is the spiritually all-pervading reality greater, or is the personal form greater? So that is the question. So do all of you have the Bhagavad Gita with you by any chance? Yes. So let's start with, we'll recite the verses, and I won't be able to explain all the verses, but we will discuss at least some of the verses. So let's begin with 12.1. How do you do it? We all recite collectively, or one person recites, or what do we do?
One person, we do the translation.
Only translations?
Translations only, because we try to complete the whole chapter in one.
Sure. Okay, so who would like to read the translation?
Arjuna inquired, which are considered to be more perfect, those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifest?
Okay, that's good. Just 1 minute. I'll go over it. So Arjuna is asking, Evam satata yuktaye bhaktastvam paripasate. On one side are the bhaktas, on the other side are ye chapya aksharam avyaktam. Those who are the impersonalists. Tesham ke yoga vittamaha. He is saying ke yoga vittamaha. Yoga is connection. Vittamaha is like uttama, which is better. So Arjuna is not reproaching. He is saying, oh yeah, both seem to be good, but which is better? That is his question. And what does Arjuna Krishna answer? Yes, please. Who would like to read?
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged in worshipping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be most perfect.
Okay, so Krishna says clearly the personalists are better. No, just 1 minute. I'm trying to connect the Wi-Fi here. How can I connect the Wi-Fi? Okay, forget it. Anyway, I don't have to show. You have the verses, isn't it? I don't have to show the verses here. Okay. So Krishna says, Mai aveshya mano ye mam. Mai aveshya. Very clearly saying, using the personal pronoun, the first person pronoun, Mai. And he answers specifically, Mai aveshya mano ye mam. Nitya yukta upasati. Shraddhaya paryopetas. Te me yukta tamo mataha. They are the most united with me. So what he is saying is, it's a clear answer. Yukta tamo, most united, maya vish, those who fix their mind on me. And then in the next verse he says, the other category, te prapnuvanti mameva, they will also attain me. But then, so do we go over all the verses, or how do we do it normally? Okay. Okay. So we'll read some of the verses, recite some of the verses. We'll see how it goes. But so Krishna basically says that in third and fourth, yeah, they are also good. Those who worship the impersonal form, they will also attain me. But in the fifth verse, he says, if you can go to the fifth verse, let's try to recite it. It's an important verse. If you have it, Klesho diktaras tesham avyakta sakta chetasam avyakta hi gatir dukkham dehavadbhir avapyate. Yes, would anyone like to read the translation?
For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal features of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied.
So, Krishna says impersonalists versus the personalists. Which is better? Krishna is saying that personalists are better. He says there is klesho adhiktarastesham. There's a lot of distress. Now, why is there distress? Because it is quite unnatural for us to think of nothing. We are conscious beings. Consciousness means we perceive something, we desire something, we relate with things. And to be told, okay, don't desire anything, don't think of anything, don't do anything, don't talk anything, that is very difficult. It's quite unnatural. Now Krishna says this is difficult. Klesha is there in it. In contrast, in the next verse he says that Tesham aham samudharta mrityu samsara sagarat. He says, I deliver them. Those who are impersonal, they are not interested in me. So they have to ascend at their own, based on their own power. But for those who devote themselves to me, I lift them up. So there is, for the personalists, there is divine intervention. There is divine grace that is available. And that accelerates the process. Tesham aham samudharta bhavami na chirat partha. Not long time afterwards. Soon those people will be elevated. So can we read translation of 12, 6 and 7? Yes, please.
For one who worships me, giving up all his activities unto me and devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service, and always meditating upon me, who has fixed his mind upon me, O son of Pritha, for him I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death.
Yeah, I am the swift deliverer. That means Krishna personally intervenes. The metaphor is, say somebody is, this looks like more like a bucket than a well, but assume this is a well. And somebody has fallen in a well. Now, if they have fallen in a well, then the impersonal path is like that person is trying to climb out of the well themselves. Maybe it's possible, but it's difficult. Now, if they practice Gyan Yoga, Dhyan Yoga, it's like there is a rope over there, but they have to use the rope and pull themselves up, climb up by the rope. But on the other hand, the path of Bhakti Yoga is that, say, here there is a big powerful person, and that person pulls you out. So all that we need to do is to hold up. So here there is climb up that is required. Here there is just hold on. So relatively speaking, which is easier? Holding on is easier. So in the personal path, Krishna says, I will elevate you. I will deliver you. So in one sense, what Krishna is saying is, the personal is better than the impersonal for two reasons. First is that ease of meditation. And the second is aid in practice. Ease of meditation means that, okay, if you have to think about Krishna, it's easy. We can hear Krishna's pastimes, we can look at his beautiful form. But if you have to contemplate the impersonal, what are we going to do? In fact, Shankaracharya says that at one place, that he says, he's like praying to the ultimate reality. He says, I have committed 3 offenses to you. He says, you have no names, but I have referred to you by names. You have no forms, and yet I have worshipped you by forms. Now you have no activities, and yet I have contemplated and narrated your activities. These are 3 great offenses I have committed to you. Please forgive me for these offenses. Now these are not offenses actually. Now why Shankaracharya taught that is a very different question. We will not go into that history. But the point is, this is their idea. that actually God is beyond names, God is beyond forms, God is beyond everything that we can conceive of, then how do you contemplate God? It's very difficult. And that's why what they say is, yeah, most people can't do it. Actually, nobody can do it. But they say most people can't do it. So for most people, bhakti can be practiced. Let them practice bhakti, and later on they will realize that bhakta and Bhagavan are the same thing. Well, that's not what Krishna teaches in the Bhagavad Gita. So now when Krishna is talking about impersonalists over here, there are two different kinds of impersonalists. When impersonalists, does anyone know these two different kinds of impersonalists? Well, then you could say there are Brahmavadis and there are Mayavadis. So the Brahmavadis prefer the impersonal Brahman. That means they say that maybe God has a personal manifestation. I don't know. I'm not attracted towards it. I don't care. I prefer the impersonal. And these are what Krishna is referring to in 12.3 to 5. They will also come to me. That means they will attain the impersonal aspect of God. But there are the Mayavadis. The Mayavadis, they don't just prefer the impersonal. What they say is, impersonal alone is real. And the personal is what they considered, it's a useful illusion. Useful illusion means what? For those who cannot meditate on the impersonal, let them temporarily worship the personal. And then after that, they'll go beyond. So the idea is, for example, in one impersonalist tradition, that you sit in front of your Ishtadev, your deity, and you focus on the deity, and you concentrate. And the success of your meditation is that by the power of your concentration, the deity will crumble into powder. And when the deity has crumbled into powder, that's when you realize that actually you have gone beyond the form to the formless. So their idea is that God is just a convenient illusion. Now, of course, what seekers on that path do is, they sit in a private room and they take some stick or stone and just pound the deity to powder. And they say, okay, the deity crumbled, I have become enlightened now. No, it's a terrible idea that the same God you worship, you say that, okay, I want to go beyond that God. So Mayavad is strongly condemned by Krishna. This is what he refers to in 9.11 and 12. So Brahmavadis, Krishna says that, okay, they will attain me. But Mayavadis, they are reproached. Krishna says, avajananti mam mudha. And he says that moghasha mogha karmano moghjana vicetasaha. That they are ruined. So now most people who talk about impersonalism in today's world, they are not Mayavadis. No, they don't really, they might be following some Mayavadi leader, they might be a part of some Mayavadi organization, but most of them don't even know the idea that, okay, we are meant to go beyond God, the form of God is an illusion. They just follow that particular organization because maybe they like their humanitarian activities, maybe they like something about their spiritual teacher, not so much their spiritual teachings. So we don't have to go about condemning people for their Mayavad, but we just understand what Krishna is teaching. So this is the first part where Krishna clearly establishes that the personal is better. So let's do a quick overview of the 12th chapter. It has 20 verses. And as I said, this chapter talks about the holistic nature of bhakti. This is in the concluding chapter of this section, chapter 7 to 12, is actually about bhakti yoga. So we discussed till now, 1 to 7 is about how bhakti is better than impersonalism. Worshipping the personal form, that is Krishna, that is better than worshipping the impersonal form. Then 8 to 12 is about how bhakti is multi-level. That means if somebody cannot fix their mind on Krishna, then what can they do? Krishna says that, okay, there are multiple levels at which you can approach in bhakti. And then 13 to 20 is bhakti is practically transformational. Practically transformational means it transforms our behavior, transforms our conduct in this world. And Krishna gives a list of qualities that characterize a devotee. So in this way, this 12th chapter, which comes at the end of the section 7 to 12, it's like a ringing endorsement of bhakti. It says bhakti is better than the impersonal path. And if you think, okay, I'm not qualified enough to practice bhakti, Krishna says there are many levels and you can fit at one of those levels. And then, okay, does bhakti mean that, oh, one will just chant and sing and forget the world? He says, no. Bhakti will transform you in a positive way in this world. So now, let's look at these two sections. So now, basically, I'll just quickly explain what is happening in 8 to 12 and then we will look at the verses. So Krishna has said that, who are the best? Those who fix their mind on me. Mai aveshya mano ye mam. And Krishna says the same thing, that if we start from the 8th verse, it's like a staircase, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. So 8 is those who are absorbed in Krishna. That means those whose mind naturally goes towards Krishna and their mind naturally resides in Krishna. So let's recite the 8th verse if you have it with you.
Just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and engage all your intelligence in me. Thus you will live in me always, without a doubt.
So, if you are absorbed in Krishna, Krishna is not saying you will attain me in future. You have already attained me. You are living in me. Maya aveshya mano ye mam nityayukta upasate. No, eva mana adatsva, mai buddhim niveshaya, nivasishyasi eva. Nivas is nivas. You live in me. Live with me, Krishna is saying. So, if your mind and intelligence are absorbed in me, then you are with me already. Actually, in one sense, God as the Paramatma is there in our hearts right now. But we don't perceive His presence because we are thinking of so many other things. If our mind and intelligence is focused on Him, then we will naturally remember Him. Then Krishna says, but somebody say, oh, my mind and intelligence can't be absorbed in Krishna. So this is, you could say, the level of pure bhakti. Shuddha bhakti, kevala bhakti. But Krishna says, if you can't do it, then there's another level. Let's look at the next level. Who would like to read that? This is 12:9.
My dear Arjuna, O winner of wealth, if you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. In this way, develop a desire to attain me.
So he says, if you can't naturally, constantly have your mind absorbed in me, then focus on me. Or rather, it's more of practice focusing on Krishna. Practice to focus on me. And Krishna says, and by this what will happen? You will get the desire for me. See, when we have desire for something, we are actually absorbed in something. Like, suppose, if you are watching a movie, maybe the movie features our favorite movie star. Then we don't say, okay, I have to concentrate to watch this movie. No, we are naturally lost in the movie, isn't it? Because we have a desire. So when we are not able to be absorbed in Krishna, that is primarily because our desire is not strong enough. But Krishna is saying that you just fix your mind on me. We hear about Krishna, like you come and study the Bhagavad Gita, you can study Krishna Shiksha, Krishna Leela. By that, our attraction to Krishna will increase. And as the attraction increases, then we will become naturally absorbed in Him. So, Krishna said this is the second level. So this is where This is what we can call as sadhana bhakti. So most of us are doing this. We come to satsang and we understand the philosophy. We do our puja, we do our japa. By all this, we are trying to fix our mind on Krishna. Now somebody may say, okay, even this I can't do. And I says, okay, then one more level is there. What's the next level? Read that. Yes. Then practice to focus on me. If you can't do that, then work for me. So work for me, this is where seva comes in. So okay, I can't just sit and chant all day. Yeah, but I can maybe come to the temple and do some seva. I can clean the temple, I can make some garlands, I can cook for the Lord. I can help set up the logistics for a program. I can organize an event. I can do there are so many ways in which we can serve Krishna. Now work for me. Krishna says, even by this you will attain me. Now, later on in the Gita, this work for me can be divided into direct work and indirect work. This direct work means we just come to a temple and say do some service. But indirect is we may be doing our job, we may be taking care of our family, but we can even do that in a mood of service to Krishna. That my job is there, but that is so that I can take care of my home, and my home is a temple of Krishna. So I'm taking care of my family, but these are not just my children. They are Krishna's children in my care. Let me take care of them. So in this way, all our activities can be spiritualized. So Krishna is saying that you can work for me.
Donate the earnings.
Sorry?
Donate the earnings.
Yes, definitely. So when we say work for me, what it means is that the objective of our work is Krishna. For whom am I working? It is for Krishna. So charity is an important part of it. Yes.
Working for Krishna does not necessarily have to be at the temple, does it? Because you
Doesn't have to be necessarily.
at a temple, it could be done elsewhere in service as well.
Yeah. So I'm just giving the temple as an example. I'm just talking about two different things. Say somebody is right now we are sitting and discussing about Krishna. Of course, this is more directly at the second level. We're practicing to focus on Krishna. But suppose somebody goes out and distributes books. They're not in the temple. They go out physically and doing various things. Somebody is building a temple for Krishna. You go and meet with this person and get this permission, and you get this donation, and you get this thing done. You talk with the architect and decide about the plan for the temple. Now that is clearly seva. But we are building a temple, but for that we may go away from the place of the temple to talk with 100 other people, isn't it? So it's more not so much the location, but the intention.
I'm asking a bit further than that. For example, if an optician goes to a third world country and tries to just eliminate blindness in people, even though they're not associated with Krishna consciousness,
Okay.
they are still performing a service. So is that considered to be part of the work for me
Okay. So if an eye doctor is trying to say remove cataract and cure the blind, say for example, well, definitely it's a noble thing to do. Now whether it will be a part of bhakti depends on how much Krishna is in their consciousness. If that person is not thinking about God, if that person is not devoted to God, then their activity is good, but it won't necessarily take them towards God. It will give them a good destination. See, the idea is that there is dharma and there is bhakti. While both are good, the two are not necessarily the same. Dharma is doing our duty, doing the right thing. Now, of course, some people may go beyond the call of duty when they are doing the right thing also. And that's noble. Doing dharma is essential for the maintenance of society. At the same time, bhakti is more about developing a personal relationship with Krishna. And if a person does not have that intention, then their good work will give them good results. But good results does not necessarily equate with going toward God. For going to God, we need to love God. And that means God has to be present in our consciousness. In fact, that's what the next level is, what Krishna talks about over here. So this is 9, 10 and 11 is work for a good cause. If you cannot work for me, then work for a good cause. Now, I'll just complete this point. Now, it can very well be that, say, some doctors who are devotees, they can come together and they can do some welfare work. So, for example, we have a hospital called the Bhaktivedanta Hospital in Mumbai. And every year they go to Barsana, which is the place of Radharani near Vrindavan. And they have a big eye camp over there, where they offer free medical care and they help cure cataract and other things for so many people who are, say, too poor to afford that medical care. And then they're expanding it to many other places also. So when something is done with devotional intention, then that becomes work for Krishna. But if somebody is not doing it with devotional intention, say for example, there is one social welfare organization whose slogan is that God, they put in God in double quotes, God sends disasters, we send relief. So, it is run by a group of atheists. Now that they are doing relief work is good, wherever. But to say that, to demonize God in that process. Now, why disasters come in the world is a different question. It's ultimately a result of human action. To blame God, to say God sends disasters, we send relief. Basically what we are saying is we are better than God. Isn't it? So now that is not at all a healthy attitude. So that's why doing good work is good. Definitely it's good. And society needs more and more people who do good work. But why they are doing it is also important. Okay? Yes.
Prabhuji, it got answered. So the first one which you said, like doing it in Barsana is spiritual.
Yes.
The second one is material. I think.
Yes, exactly.
It got answered.
Yes. Thank you. Now when Krishna says in the 11th verse, work for a good cause. Now the idea over there is, ultimately bhakti is about, ultimately spiritual growth is about thinking beyond ourselves. Thinking beyond self-centered interests. You know, when our consciousness is shrunk, you know, we are all self-centered. That means we are all eye specialists. Not eye specialists, but eye specialists. Isn't it? So, we are eye specialists. So, when this happens, basically, we don't think of anything beyond us. What can give me pleasure? What can give me enjoyment? And we see more and more the world going in that direction. Where now, from the Bhagavad Gita perspective, if somebody is attached to their family, they say, think of something beyond the family. But in today's world, many people are not even attached to their family. Isn't it? And that is not a healthy thing. So at least in one sense, we can say from a spiritual perspective, family attachment can keep one's consciousness stuck so that it is not going towards God. But just entering into a family is actually expanding one's consciousness beyond oneself. Oh, when one has a family, one has to think of something beyond oneself. When one is married, one has to think about one's partner. When one has children, then the children come first. You know, the parents, they can't just do whatever they want to do. So, to some extent, what is happening is our consciousness is expanding beyond oneself. And Krishna says such expansion of consciousness towards something beyond oneself, that is a step in one's spiritual growth. So it could be for one's community, it could be for one's country, it could be for a particular demographic of people. So all this is also good and it can help one grow upwards. So Krishna in this way says that bhakti is multi-level. And if you cannot fit at this level, you can fit at this level. You cannot fit at this level, you can fit at this level. So in that way, the mood of Krishna has talked about this earlier in 4.11. Mama vartamanu vartante manushya partha sarvasha. All people are on my path, he says. Everyone is connected with me. Everyone is ultimately coming to me. In some religious traditions, God is depicted as very demanding. It's like, you worship me in this form by this way, or you're going to go to hell. My way or hell. My way, not just the highway, the hell way. So, but the Gita is not like that. It is that Krishna is saying basically, from your place, at your pace, access my grace. From your place, at your pace, access my grace, he says. That Krishna says, if you can't fit here, fit here. If you can't fit here, fit here. So Krishna in this way has a very inclusive approach. When bhakti is multi-level, it's that one doesn't have to necessarily have a great attraction towards God. Okay, one can just have a simple service attitude, attitude of contributing something beyond oneself. And from there one can grow. So this chapter is talking about the glory of bhakti. That it is better than impersonal worship because it's easier, it gives us divine aid, and it's multi-level. And then that will bring us to the third section. Yes, bro, you had a question or comment?
So, ultimately, I mean, in all these steps, our aim should be to reach the first level, or we can keep working on those levels?
Okay, so is our aim to reach the first level? Yes, in terms of consciousness, we try to reach the first level, where we are constantly absorbed in Krishna. But depending on how our service calls us, we may function at the third level also, if required. So, for example, Srila Prabhupada was in Vrindavan, and he was absorbed in Vrindavan, chanting the names of Krishna and was visiting the various temples and writing books about Krishna. But then he left Vrindavan to go to America. And he did outreach work all over the world. Now, when he was doing outreach, he had to think about, okay, how do I get the legal permission? How do I get the finances? This, that. He had to build temples. But his heart was always absorbed in Krishna. So, in one sense, he left Vrindavan. You could say he was at the first level. He came down to the other levels. But he didn't actually come down. It was the service to Krishna that, because of which he chose to function at that level. So, we try to rise to a higher level. But at the same time, see, the point in bhakti is not just the level at which we are functioning. It is the purpose for which we are functioning. If our mood is to serve Krishna, then serving Krishna, if it requires us to be functioning at third level, that is fine, we function at third level. Okay.
Is this 4.11 shloka that you mentioned, or is it 12?
Now, the same theme Krishna has talked about in 4.11, that is elaborated over here. So, the multi-level approach. In 4.11, Krishna says, everyone is on my path. Mama vartamanu vartante manushya partha sarvasha. So that same theme, how everyone can be on his path. You can fit here, fit here, fit here. It's not like 1-0. You do this or you're out. No, if you can't do this, then do this. If you can't do this, then do this. If you can't do this, then do this. Like that. Okay. Thank you. So now, that brings us to the last section in this Gita. In the Gita 12:13 to 20, Krishna talks about the qualities that endear a devotee to him. That means, Yo mad bhakta same priya. That is the chorus that comes in various lines. Such a devotee is dear to me. Bhaktiman yah same priya. Such a devotee, such a bhakta is dear to me. So, once that Krishna has talked about devotion as the best path in many ways, devotion as accessible path, but then now he is saying, okay, what kind of qualities in a devotee endear him? And here that's something very significant. Krishna does not talk here about, okay, a devotee who fasts on Ekadashi is dear to me. A devotee who chants so many rounds is dear to me. A devotee who goes to the temple regularly is dear to me. Yeah, that's implied. That being a devotee means doing those things. If we're not doing those things, we are not a devotee. But Krishna is not emphasizing those activities. Krishna is saying that, if we are here, then we have our relationship with Krishna. These are our bhakti activities. We relate with Krishna. But Krishna is saying how you relate with the world. So this is Krishna. How we relate with the world. That also affects our bhakti. So Krishna, the list of qualities Krishna will give over here is all about how we function in the world. Many times people who are religious, people who are devoted, they become very contemptuous of others. They have a holier than thou attitude. I was in Texas, in America. In the Western world, America is the most religious country. Especially the southern part of America is all quite evangelical Christian. So I was in Texas, and in front of there's a car in front of us, and the car bumper had a quote written over here. Oh God, please save me from your preachers. Now, the idea is normally God saves us through His preachers, isn't it? But the preachers are very looking down at everyone, condemning everyone. Then what happens? I don't want to do anything with such people. So please save me from your preachers. So often, when religious people either become arrogant or they become very judgmental, they start looking down at others, then they alienate people. So Krishna is saying that if you are a devotee, yes, you are dear to me. But even as a devotee, how you behave in the world is important. And that's why the first thing he says is, Adveshta sarva bhutanam maitraha karuna evacha. The first characteristic of a devotee is not against anyone. A devotee does not desire the ill of anyone. But rather, maitraha karuna evacha is kind, compassionate to others. So the idea is, if you consider devotees' qualities, there could be devotional qualities and there could be behavioral qualities. So devotional qualities are, like I said, a person does japa, a person does puja, a person goes to temple. So these are talked by Krishna earlier, for example, 9, 13, 14. But behavioral qualities is what Krishna is focusing in 12, 13 to 20 over here. Because the idea is, at one level, Arjuna is going to function in the world. And Krishna wants us to function in a way that attracts others to him. If as devotees, we are just hard-hearted. This person is a materialist, I don't care for this person. No. Then who is going to care for them? How are they ever going to be attracted toward Krishna? So nowadays, many people say, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. You ever heard this saying? People say, I'm not religious, I am religious. In fact, there's a whole category of people, they call them SBNR. Spiritual but not religious. So because their idea is being religious makes people narrow-minded, it makes them dogmatic, it makes them argue with each other. And they say that, I want to be spiritual, I want to be open to higher experiences. I want to become more forgiving. I want to become more compassionate. I want to find meaning and purpose in my life. But I don't want anything to do with these rituals and dogmas. So, now, in one sense, these people have some validity to them. They've had negative experiences with religion or with religious people. They say, these people, I don't want to have anything to do with them. So, in this spiritual but not religious circle, there is a saying. And actually that saying, in one sense, is echoing what Krishna has said thousands of years ago. What they say is that don't tell me what you believe. Show me how you behave. And that is essential. And that is their saying, but that is what Krishna is saying over here. Now, don't tell me what you believe. Now, this doesn't literally mean we don't tell them. But the point is that you can believe whatever you want. But I don't really care how you believe. But by your actions, show me how you behave. Show me how you behave. So our behavior should be such that people feel attracted. No. Okay. How do you stay so calm? Sometimes we may preach to somebody, you start chanting Hare Krishna. And they don't chant Hare Krishna, we start yelling at them. I say, chant Hare Krishna, your anger will go away. Well, your anger doesn't seem to have gone away, isn't it? Isn't it? You're getting angry. So, the idea is, if people see that our bhakti practice has transformed us positively, then they will be attracted. So, the world doesn't care. Say, now the Kartik month is going on. So, we all may do some Kartik Vrata. Now, the world doesn't care what Kartik Vrata you did, or how many rounds you chanted, or how many verses you memorized. But what the world, say for example, if your family is not practicing bhakti, if your relatives, your friends, your colleagues, now what they are going to say is, okay, how calm do you stay amid difficulties? How kind are you? How forgiving are you? Now, how gentle are you? So, those are the kind of qualities that Krishna describes over here. So, he says, a person who is calm amidst ups and downs. A person who does not, who is forgiving, who is gentle. At the same time, a person is determined. So basically, Krishna is talking about behavioral qualities that will be attractive to everyone in the world. And those are the qualities, he says, any devotee at one level is dear to Krishna. Just because we are devoted to him, he is dear. But if we have these qualities, Krishna says, this makes you especially dear to me. So let's look at 12:15. This list. This is one of a very important verse. We'll recite that verse also. Yasman no. Can you come to 12:15? Yasman no dvijate. You can repeat after me. It's a little difficult word. Yasman no dvijate loko. Yasman no dvijate loko. Loka no dvijate cha yah. No dvijate cha yah. Harsha marsha bhayo dvegair. Marsha bhayo dvegair. Mukto yah sachame priyah. So, in general, what happens in the world, whenever two people are in a relationship, somehow the things we do disturb the other person. And what the other person does disturbs us. That's just the way life is. There was one slogan I saw on a person's t-shirt. He said, the more I get to know people, the more I love my dog. So the idea is relationships are hard work. So it's just the nature of life that we will disturb each other. But Krishna is saying that don't succumb to this normal tendency that is there. Others may do things which may not like, but don't get disturbed by them. And if others are doing something which we don't like, don't disturb them. So now, does this mean that we don't try to correct others, we don't try to instruct others? No, it doesn't mean that. It means that we don't do it in an agitating way. We don't do it in a domineering way. Now, if sometimes somebody gives a feedback, how they give a feedback often makes much more, impacts us much more than what they say. Sometimes somebody may speak a critical word, but they may speak with such gentleness that we feel endeared. Now somebody may say, maybe your wife says to her husband, you don't love me. Says, I love you. Now, the words are saying one thing, but the tone is saying completely opposite. So when Krishna is saying, don't disturb. The nature of the world is, sometimes if somebody is doing something wrong, we have to tell them. But don't do it in a disturbing way. So the idea is that if our behavior is appealing to people. Now appealing to people doesn't mean that we compromise our principles and we give up our bhakti. It just means in our normal functioning, we are kind, we are courteous. When Srila Prabhupada was asked, how do we know your followers? Prabhupada didn't say they follow the 4 regulative principles, they wake up early in the morning, they chant 16 rounds. He could have said that, but this was a journalist asking him. And then Prabhupada said that they are perfect gentlemen and ladies. What he meant by that is they are well behaved. So our behavior is important. How we interact with people. Krishna says that will determine how dear you are to me. So I won't go into the specific list of the qualities, but I'll just elaborate on this principle and then we'll conclude this. So generally, like we think that, say, I am here and say Krishna is somewhere here. And I have my bhakti, which I go to the temple, I go to my puja room, and then this person is here. And how I interact with this person, we think this is just mundane. This has nothing to do with bhakti. Somebody may go to a temple and recite Trunadapi Sunichina Tarorapi Sahishnuna, humbler than a blade of grass. I want to be tolerant like a tree. And then they go to their business and they yell at their employees. Okay. And they don't even see a disconnect between the two. Now this doesn't mean that if the employees are not doing the work, we have to be strong. We may have to be assertive. But being assertive is different from being abusive. So, bhakti is not just about the devotional activities that we do. It's also about how we relate with people. So the idea is, if you put it this way, say if I am here, now Krishna is above us, and the other person is here. So I have my relationship with Krishna, I have my relationship with the other person, and this other person also has a relationship with Krishna. Now, they may not be related with Krishna in the sense that they may not be practicing bhakti right now. But at the same time, Krishna has a relationship with them because they are still parts of Krishna. So now, what is going to happen is, if they know that I am practicing bhakti, then how I behave with them will shape their perception of Krishna also. So I could say that 1, this is bhakti. Which is true, but Krishna is saying 2 is also bhakti. Why? Because it is going to determine whether that person turns toward Krishna or not. So the way I behave with that person will determine whether, this person is a devotee and a devotee behaves in such a irresponsible way, or a devotee behaves in such an insensitive way, such an arrogant way. I don't want to have anything to do with Krishna. So the ambit of bhakti is both the relationships. So in our family, say if we are practicing bhakti, maybe our children are not practicing, our spouse is not practicing, we want them to practice. That's natural. That's wonderful. But rather than forcing them to try to develop their relationship with Krishna, if our bhakti practice helps us to become, say, more forgiving, more understanding, more reasonable, more responsible, then when they see that actually if the 2 is improving, now we do 1, if you consider this is 3. Now among these 3 relationships, in one sense, 1 is what is most in our control. We can make our time, we can have our space, and we can practice bhakti. That's up to us. Now nothing is completely in our control, but relatively speaking. Now 2, our relationship with the other person is somewhat in our control. 3, how much that person relates with Krishna, that is not in our control. Now, so what is more in our control, we need to focus more energy on that. But unfortunately what we do is, this is our controlling capacity. In terms of control capacity. But often what happens is, in our energy, in our emphasis, we do the exact opposite. That means we focus most on 3. Now you come to the temple, you chant, you fast, you stop eating this food. And then what happens is, we don't focus much on 2. That means what that person's expectations from us is, what that person would like us to do, we don't focus too much on that. And in that process, sometimes we neglect 1 on. So if we emphasize 3 too much, then we emphasize 3 too much, try to force the other person to practice bhakti, that creates a strain in our relationship with them. Because what happens is, in every relationship, if there's any relationship between two people, there is something we do for them. That is our contribution in that relationship. And there is something they do, at least we want them to do. That's our expectation from them. Now what happens when we become devotees? It's like our expectation increases. No, you should not eat this food, you should do this. And our contribution decreases. Because we start thinking this is mundane. We might do many things with those people, but we stop doing those things. Because it's all mundane. Now naturally what happens is that person starts thinking, if so much is being asked from me in this relationship and so little is being given to me, then why am I even in this relationship? Isn't it? So, actually speaking, we need to make sure that our contribution, if not in terms of time, but in terms of quality, is improving. If that happens, then that person will see that and they will be inspired to develop their relationship with Krishna. So when Krishna is saying, don't disturb others and don't be disturbed by others. Don't be disturbed by others means that if the person is not yet interested in in their relationship with Krishna, don't force them too much. Now we want our children to practice bhakti and we can get them to a temple and that's nice. We try our best. But if you force them, then as they grow up, they become teenagers, they become older. Then if their prominent childhood memory is what? Oh, this bhakti means I was forced to wake up and I was forced to sit and chant. I didn't like it at all. Then when they have freedom, they will just go away from Krishna. But if somehow we give them happy memories of bhakti. Oh, I came to a temple and I performed some drama and we all dressed up in various costumes. We danced in kirtans. We had such nice food over there. They have happy memories of bhakti. Then that will attract them toward Krishna. So that means now when we say don't disturb, Krishna says yasma no dijate loka, and don't be disturbed. So don't disturb means don't force three. Don't force others to practice bhakti. Do this, do this, do this. And don't be disturbed by others. What that means is that don't decrease the two. You didn't do this, so I stopped caring for you. Now, of course, there is one exceptional situation, is that if that person starts stopping us from doing one, that means that person stops us from practicing bhakti itself, then we have to be firm. Then we have to draw some boundaries. But if that person has normal human expectations from a particular relationship, then we need to be doing that. So don't disturb others. That means don't increase the expectations and decrease the contributions. And in this way if we function, then we'll attract many, many more people toward Krishna. So overall Krishna says, in the last verse, while he says that all these behavioral qualities, if you can manifest, it will attract you to me. But in the last verse is, if you just devote it to me, that itself will please me. So it's not that we may start thinking, oh, I have to chant also and I have to behave well also and I have to do this. How many things I have to do? It can seem like a burden. It's not that Krishna is just piling his expectations from us more and more and more. Krishna is just reminding us that bhakti is not just about how we relate with him. Bhakti also includes how we relate with others. So let's recite the last verse and then we'll conclude. Actually, let's look at the second last verse before that. It's second last verse is Aniketah Sthirmatir. Is that the verse? No, the last part of it. Last part. Aniketah Sthirmatir. So now that's a very beautiful point. Aniketah. Niketan is what? Niketan is home. Now, so Krishna says Aniketah Sthirmatir. What he means is that my devotee does not depend on any physical shelter. Because Sthirmatir, the devotee is sheltered in me. That means that doesn't mean we have to become homeless. What it means is that our shelter is not in this world. Our shelter is in Krishna. And when our shelter is in Krishna, then even if the ups and downs in this world will come, they won't disturb us so much. In general, what happens is, the world is filled with ups and downs. Kabhi khushi, kabhi gum. That happens. Now some people, when there is happiness, for them, it's like They go huge up and they go huge down. So they just over when they go to a job and somebody, the boss appreciates them, small appreciation. I love this job. This is the best job in the world. And next day maybe the boss gives them some feedback. I hate this job. Why did I even take this job? Sometimes the same happens even with relationships. One day people say, I love you. I can't stay without you. The next day, I can't live with you. It's just these extremes keep happening. Now that happens primarily because we are letting those things become our shelter. Our job is important, our relationships are important. But neither our job nor our relationship should be our shelter. It is Krishna who is our shelter. So now if this is happening, this is unhealthy. But for a devotee, what happens is ups and downs come, but a devotee stays steady in ups and downs. How does that happen? So this happens when we are sheltered in material things. But we are not so much affected. We are still affected because the world's ups and downs are there. But we won't be so affected because we are sheltered in Krishna. So aniketaha sthirmatir. When they focus on Krishna, okay, this bad thing has happened, but still Krishna has a plan for me. How can I serve Krishna amid this bad situation also? This good thing has happened, okay, Krishna is providing me some opportunity to do something more for him. What is that opportunity? How can I serve Krishna? So in that way, if we are Krishna conscious, through even good and bad, we can stay steady and keep connected with Krishna. Keep not just connected with Krishna, but keep connecting even more with Krishna. Let's look at the last verse. Ye tu dharmamritamidam yathoktam paryupasate shraddha dhana matparama bhaktaste tiva me priyaha. So ativa means exceedingly. Krishna is saying, such a devotee is extremely dear to me. So now earlier I talked about a difference between dharma and bhakti. Dharma is more about ethical conduct in the world. Bhakti is about connection with Krishna. Now Krishna says, Yetu dharma amrutamidam. This is the immortal dharma. Amruta is immortal. So amrutam, dharma amrutam. So even in dharma, there are hierarchies. And our relationship with Krishna is our paradharma. That is the supreme dharma. We have many dharmas, but we have the highest dharma. So, yetu dharma amritamidam. Krishna is saying, one who practices this guideline, this instruction, this principle that I have given about bhakti. Yathoktam paripasate. As I have explained, they worship me accordingly. That person, if they have faith, Krishna is not necessarily saying that you have to practice it at this level. But faithfully, Shraddhadhana matparam, make me the supreme goal. See, when Krishna's expectations are there, Krishna's expectations are never beyond our capacity. If Krishna expects more than our capacity, then Krishna will make our capacity more. But what Krishna sees is, in your capacity right now, how much are you doing? So Shraddha means, okay, this is what I can do. Let me do this wholeheartedly. And if we use whatever, we may want more time to study the Bhagavad Gita, we may want more time to do bhakti, but maybe our jobs, our family responsibilities don't allow us so much time. But okay, whatever time we have, how well are we using it? If we use the time, the capacity, the energy, the intelligence, the abilities that we have, Krishna says, that itself, bhaktaste tiva me priya, such a devotee is dear to me. And Krishna will increase those for us in due course. And this way, Krishna is telling, basically this verse, this chapter and this section, which is the 6 to 12 chapter, the section of bhakti, that concludes by Krishna saying that just practice bhakti. You will become dear to me and you will attain me. So I'll summarize what we discussed today. So I discussed first about the Gita overview. We discussed how the Gita is primarily about decision making, and to should Arjuna fight or not fight? So for that purpose, Krishna actually says that there are two options. Arjuna is thinking that renunciation and action, but Krishna says in renunciation there is premature and mature renunciation, and in action there are multiple levels. There is irresponsible action, there is material attached action, and materially detached action. And then Krishna within that he further talks about this summary nobody is going to understand. Just a set of lines. But anyway, this is for those who have heard the talk. Krishna says in this there is Jnana Yoga and Dhyan Yoga. And here there is Bhakti Yoga and Karma Yoga. And this is what Krishna recommends the most. So then we discussed how chapters 1 to 6 are from Karma Yoga through Dhyan Yoga to its Bhakti Yoga, or you can say absorption in Krishna. And that same path is described in another way. This is chapters 1 to 6 and then 7 to 12. So in 7 to 12 we discuss how Krishna is offering resources for remembering him in various ways. How Krishna exists in everything, how Krishna can be remembered at the time of death, how Bhakti is so powerful, how Krishna exists everywhere in this world, how everything exists in Krishna. And then that brings us to the last chapter, in the section that's 12th chapter. So in 12th chapter, we discuss the three sections of the 12th chapter. So 1 to 7 was the first section, which was about Bhakti is better than impersonalism. It is the object of meditation is easy and we have aid. It's like Krishna lifts us out. Tesham aham samuddharta. Then 8 to 12 was what? Bhakti is multi-level. Multi-level means it's accessible to everyone. So from your place, at your pace, access God's grace. So we talked about be absorbed in Krishna, fix the mind on Krishna, or work for Krishna, or work for some higher cause. Those were from 8 to 12. And the last part we discussed was about 13 to 20. It is about qualities. Especially it is behavioral qualities. That Krishna is focusing not that you are relating with me, that is implicit in that you are a devotee, but how you relate with the world. How you face life's ups and downs. How you deal with difficult people. That is what will also endear you to me. So we discussed about how don't agitate others, don't disturb others, and don't be disturbed by others. What that means is that in our relationship with Krishna, what we do is we focus on one and make sure that we have time for bhakti, and then we focus on two and do what is expected in that relationship, and then 3 we leave it to Krishna. So don't disturb others in terms of demanding 3 from them, and make sure that 2 is also being done. So both of these, Krishna says, are a part of bhakti, and we can be steady amid life's and ups and downs if we are sheltered in Krishna, and that's how we can endear ourselves to him. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions or comments? Yes, please.
I have a question. When you said in the beginning, bhakti is all about or expanding our consciousness. So is there any right expansion of consciousness and incorrect expansion of consciousness? I am thinking about others, like for example, I am associated with a sect or a group who believes that, okay, this method of, remembering God or this God should prevail on the entire globe. And I am joining hands with them and doing something or activities which are against the humanity. So the expansion of consciousness itself is there, but whether that expansion is good or bad, so does that also make a difference?
Very good question. See, in general, we would think that expansion of consciousness is good. But if expansion of consciousness is exclusivist means I'm not thinking about myself. I'm thinking about the entire group of people that I'm associated with. We would think that is good. But the problem is how do I think of people who don't belong to that group? That is important. So in general, when we talk about fanaticism, we might think of fanatics as people who just hold a gun and throw bombs at others and stuff like that. Well, that is true, no doubt, they are fanatics. But fanaticism, the principle of fanaticism is something which we might all succumb to. What is that principle? That what works for me is the only thing that can work for anyone. That if I am worshipping God in this way and this is benefiting me, then this is the only thing that can benefit anyone. And anybody who is doing anything differently, that person is not only wrong, that person is wrong-headed. That person is evil. That is the basic idea of fanaticism. If it works for me, great. Let it work for me and let me share it with others. But if I start demonizing those who don't agree with me, that is dangerous. So when you talk about expansion of consciousness, people can be devoted, but they can also be very narrow-minded. In fact, when that happens, that's how extremism comes up. So fanaticism can come in two variants. One is what you can call as exclusivism. Exclusivism is we think that we have exclusive rights to God. That if you're not following my path, you're going to go to hell. But from exclusivism, there is another called extremism. So exclusivists, it's more in thought, it's more in belief. That I believe that only my path is the right path. But extremists are even kinder. They say, if you're not following my path, you're not only going to go to hell, I will help you get there faster. So, extremism, as the word itself says, is extremely dangerous. So you might say there is expansion of consciousness, but if the expansion of consciousness is leading to excluding others, not just excluding but demonizing others, that's a problem. Krishna talks about this in 18:22 in the Bhagavad Gita, where he talks about knowledge in the mode of ignorance. Yattu krutsnavad ekasmin karye saktam ahetukam atatvarthavad alpam cha tattamasam udaharatam. Yattu krutsnavad ekasmin. One thing is everything. This way is the only way for everyone. That idea, Krishna says, is knowledge in the mode of ignorance. What it means is, normally our knowledge removes our ignorance. But this kind of knowledge only increases our ignorance. That means our knowledge is only within a small, narrow area. We just keep hearing things or learning things which reinforce our preconceptions. And thus we keep demonizing other people. Like somebody has a hammer. A child gets a hammer for the first time. See the nail out there? Hit it. Tuck, tuck, hit it. And the nail almost magically goes inside. Oh, wow. And then the child sees that there's a hammer and starts looking at everything as a potential nail. Starts smashing a phone, starts smashing a TV. No. Just because you have a hammer doesn't mean everything is a nail, isn't it? So sometimes we do that. That kind of thing is dangerous. So yes, if the expansion of consciousness is leading us not only to think of a larger number of people, but it is making us demonize others, then that is bad. That's why if you see in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is not saying, I am the well-wisher of my devotees alone. He says, I am the well-wisher of everyone. Suhridam sarva bhutanam. And even devotees, adveshta sarva bhutanam. A devotee is well-wisher of everyone. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yes, please.
This is from that question and also my question. I think it's like half time my mind is trying to think. So when continuation to the discussion from there. So association is very important, right? So we should should try to, maybe I'll ask my question first and then I'll come. So I was trying to understand when you're talking about the levels of bhakti, and so working for a good cause, and so in my what thought came or is coming is more working for a good cause. So it's also people who are falling under Maya, or these people who are falling under irresponsible action. Anyone would be a part of that, right? And I don't know how to make my question, but and where the inclusive approach is from your place, at your place, attract
Access
my grace. So all of them are in their own
Okay,
place.
I get your
Are
question.
you getting?
I get your question. I rephrase it. That at one level, we say that bhakti is universal, and that everyone can come to Krishna. But then we also make categories. These are this kind of people. These are this kind of people, and then people have their own. I mean, it's not just we are making those categories. People also have their conceptions. So, like we say, Mayavadis, they're offensive, and Krishna condemns them at one level. At least he says that Moghasha, their endeavors are futile. So, how does these two things, like categorization people and categorizing people at one level and including them, how do they both work together? Okay. So, see, there are always two things whenever we are relating with people. That when we are relating with people, one is we see only their present condition. This person is like this person is like that. The other is we only see their potential. Now, in the present condition, everybody has some problems. Everybody has some limitations. Potentials means it's like future possibilities. So when we are relating with people, what are we focusing on? Now, if we focus only on the present, we can say that there are so many people who are so unqualified, disqualified in so many different ways. When Srila Prabhupada went to America, and the first audience who were seriously interested in the message were the hippies. Now, the hippies were a part of the counterculture. And those were people who were, in one sense, rejected by Western society also. From some simply cultural perspective, those people would be considered the most unqualified for bhakti, because they were into all kinds of unhealthy habits. Prabhupada talked about the 4 regulative principles. Now, for those people, the only regulative principle was to break all regulative principles. But Prabhupada saw the potential. They had some spark, they had some spiritual interest. And Prabhupada fanned that spark. And gradually, whatever was the present condition, the problems, they rose above that. So, we need to be able to see the potential. If we look only at the present, then we can find faults with everyone. In fact, and we can say that they are not devotees. In fact, that way somebody can look at us and find faults with us also. Isn't it? So, it is somebody who saw the potential in us, that's how we got connected and we are growing in bhakti. Now, on the other hand, if we look only at the potential and not look at the present, then everybody has the potential to practice bhakti. Everybody has the innate, the soul longs for loving Krishna. But where they are at also matters. If somebody is right now an atheist, now there can be different atheists also. Some people are atheists in the sense that I don't believe in God. There are some people who are anti-theists. That means they aggressively campaign against God. So, now if somebody is an aggressive anti-theist, for example, then we try to talk with them, they will just bombard us with their atheistic arguments. And maybe, now, atheism itself can be challenged and countered. But we have not studied atheism throughout our life, isn't it? Maybe they have dedicated their whole life to coming up with arguments to justify atheism. And we may not be able to counter them. That doesn't mean they can't be countered, but we may not be the right person to counter them. So then it's better to keep a distance from them. At that time, even that person has the potential to practice bhakti, but I don't have the capacity to uncover their potential. So when we are relating with people, we need to see both the present and the potential, both. So when we look at the present, that is when there is categorizing. Okay, this person is a worshipper of the Devatas. This person is a Mayavadi. This person is a philanthropist. This person is an alcoholic. This person is a workaholic. We can have different categories like that. And that categorization, it's not false. But the problem is when we reduce people to their categories. Or rather we consider those categories to be the permanent conditions. Yeah, that person may be alcoholic right now, but that doesn't mean that soul is alcoholic. Isn't it? So when you look at the potential, then there is universalizing. You see that everyone is a potential devotee of Krishna. So it depends on the context where we need to be categorizing or where we need to be universalizing. So generally, in terms of our sharing with others, we can be universalizing. We don't know whose potential is manifesting how much. So better try to give an opportunity to everyone. But when it comes to connecting with others, connecting means when we are developing a deeper relationship with them. That means sharing means we're just giving them the opportunity. But once we start to having an interaction with them, then we have to see what is the effect of interacting with them. It's like say, I am here and say the other person is here. That means I am, say, as a devotee, I am practicing devotee. And that person may be an atheist, that person may be an impersonalist, that person may be whatever it is. Now when I link with them, what should be happening is that person rises up. If this is happening, then we can maintain the link. But if that, what happens is that I start going down because of that, then we have to create some boundaries. Then we have to keep a distance. So if their present condition is such that it's having a toxic effect on me, then better keep a distance, isn't it? So that's how we are, in one sense, when we are universalizing, we are caring. We need to care for others. But when we are categorizing, we are careful. And both are required. Like if a doctor is treating a patient, a doctor has to be caring. But if the patient has some infectious disease, then doctor doesn't want to get that disease. The doctor also has to be careful. So caring and careful, both are required. Okay? Thank you.
And when Mrs. Koke saw another thought that came, so where does facing your karma in this play? So where we spoke about, where the discussion was about you having faith there, and somewhere you are getting influenced, right? So how should I understand that this is what you are facing because of your karma? Am I making sense?
Okay. So when we face certain situations, for example, say we are in an unhealthy relationship where maybe we have a exploitative boss, or we have somebody who is giving us a very hard time. So is that because of our karma, and what should we do in that situation? Well, in general, when situations come upon us, they can have multiple causes. Single factor, even in statistics or in general research, single factor analysis is very naive. Say, okay, this person from this community, they have no heart disease, and this community, they have terrible heart disease. Therefore, we say, this community has genetical problems. No, it could be lifestyle-related problems. It could be environmental problems. There could be so many other factors could be there with it. So we can't do single factor analysis. Similarly, with respect to karma, it's sometimes once we learn the philosophy of karma, we make it all a single factor analysis. Well, if somebody eats, say, on a cold night, maybe 2 dozen ice creams, and the next morning they wake up, their throat, ice cream, they feel like screaming. Now, is their throat condition due to their past karma? Well, yes, but it is past night's karma, not past life's karma, isn't it? So, in general, in the Vedic tradition, it is said, when we are looking for cause, move from the drushta to the adrushta. Move from the immediate cause, the visible cause, toward the invisible cause. So first, any event, let's try to make this a little simpler. See, any event that has happened, the cause of that event can be put in various circles. So, why is my throat bad? Did I eat something terrible? Okay, look at that. Why is my throat bad? Did I talk too much? Did I sing too much? Did I yell too much? Or was I exposed to the cold weather? Do I have some chronic throat condition? We can look at each event can be placed in various causal circles. So what the karma philosophy does is, it gives us one more causal circle to place the events in our life in. But in general, when we consider a person to be mentally unstable, mentally unstable can be a very judgmental label, but when we say mentally unstable, that we say you are overreacting here. What happens is that person is putting everything in sometimes the biggest possible circle. Somebody comes to, say, a party or an event or a get-together, and they greet someone, the other person doesn't greet them back. After say, everyone here hates me. Maybe the other person had heard some bad news and there's something else was in their mind, they didn't even notice you were there. Isn't it? There could be so many reasons why that person didn't greet you back. Everybody here is biased against me. No, maybe not. So, when we take an event and put it in the biggest possible circle, or make it in a very big circle, then it's an unnecessary escalation of events. That's not required. So try to find out, whenever any event has happened, what is the circle what is the most constructive circle that you put it in? Say if some guest comes to our house, and that guest says, I'm feeling cold. And we say, what to do? This world is dukkhalaya. And now this world is a place of distress, but that is not the circle to put their distress in, isn't it? Okay, if you're feeling cold, you want me to increase the temperature of the room? You want me to give you some warm clothes? Don't go to the adrushta level of this world is a place of distress. Work at the immediate level. So, in general, if we are facing some problems, the karma can be one box. But it doesn't have to be the only box. Okay, if my boss is giving me a hard time, then just try to find out what happened. Maybe somebody from our own background or our demographic had come, and that person was very responsible in the past, and because of that person has a bias against our demographic. It could be like that. And if that is the case, then we just work and we deal with that issue. As we work consistently, that person sees that their conception changes. So, could it be that now if some person is giving us a hard time, then it could be just they have a malicious nature. Now, if they have a sadistic kind of streak, or they are what is it called, narcissistic or whatever, then now yes, we could say that my being in that job or my getting that job could be because of my past karma. But does that mean that I have to stay in that job forever? Well, no, it depends on what is the intelligent thing to do. Krishna didn't tell Arjuna that, okay, the Kauravas are oppressing you, it's your own karma. So let yourself be oppressed. No, he focused on, what they did, we accept that it has happened now. But now what is to be done for us is our dharma. What is the right thing for me to do? What is the responsible thing for me to do? That's for us to intelligently decide. So there are no simple answers to this, but it's not that accepting the philosophy of karma means passively letting anyone do anything to us. No. But it also means that we don't have a knee-jerk reaction to everything. That yes, sometimes we get into a bad situation. We could say this is my past karma. Let me endure it. But how long do I keep enduring it? That depends.
So the part of this tolerance is there, like when
Okay, so tolerance is a good point. Tolerance means essentially to keep small things small so that we can focus on big things. It is not to make big things small. Say for example, you have come for this class now. Let's say the chair you are sitting on is not very comfortable for you. Now, that is an annoyance, but you could say that's a small thing. It's not that I have to sit lifelong on this chair. It's just a couple of hours. The big thing here is, I've come to hear this, learn the Bhagavad Gita. So, okay, the chair is not comfortable, it doesn't matter so much. So, keep small things small so that you can focus on the big things. But suppose you are sitting and you come here for hearing this class, and say the person next to you is constantly talking on the phone. And you say, I should be tolerant. Now, that tolerance will actually stop you from doing the big thing. The big thing here is you have come to hear the Bhagavad Gita. So then what do? Maybe tell them, if you want to talk, can you go out of this class? Or maybe you shift to some other place. Do something practical. So tolerance is about keeping small things small. It is not about making big things small. And now that's why I said, Krishna told Arjuna to tolerate heat and cold. That means he's saying, tolerate the fact that you have to fight against your relatives. That on the opposite side, Bhishma is there, Drona is there. That's unfortunate, but tolerate that. But Krishna didn't say that. Tolerance means that, okay, the Kauravas are abusing you, the Kauravas are abusing, they dishonored your wife, they defrauded your kingdom, tolerate all that. No. You are a Kshatriya, you are a warrior, you are maintained to, it is your duty, it is your responsibility to maintain dharma in the world. Therefore, you have to do what is required for that. So, in that sense, tolerance, it is keep small things small. And by that, we are able to keep big things big. So, both aspects are there, keeps. Now, we may say, who decides what is a small thing and what is a big thing? Well, that is where intelligence comes in. Prabhupada says intelligence means to see things in their proper perspective. What is a small thing and what is a big thing? Now, this can also vary from person to some extent. But so for us, if you consider 1, 2, 3, say the 3 relationships I talked about, our relationship with Krishna, our relationship with other person, and their relationship with Krishna. Now, as I said that, now that person may not be practicing bhakti, and that's a big thing for us if they don't want to develop 3. But otherwise, if that person is a good human being, is otherwise doing their responsibilities, is being well, is a reasonable person otherwise, then okay, they're not practicing bhakti, it's not that big a thing. Accept that. And make sure that we keep practicing bhakti and we keep connecting with that. So we could say, keep small things small is 3. Now, the 3 is important, no doubt. Their relationship with Krishna is important. But 3 is not so important that we have to disrupt 2 and then disrupt 1 because of that. But on the other hand, if they stop us from practicing bhakti, then that is a big thing. Then we may have to create some boundaries. Sometimes we may have to take a stand. So, if a big thing is being made small, then we have to take a stand. Okay? So, tolerance is an important thing, but tolerance is, if you see in the Bhagavad Gita, if you look at the flow of the Gita itself, 2:13 talks about tolerance. Tam stitikshasva bharata. But then, okay, what happened? Okay, 2:14, okay. Sorry, 2:13 talks about knowledge of spirituality, and 2:14 talks about tolerance. And then immediately 2:15 talks about transcendence. It says, Yam hi na vyathayantyete purusham purusharshava samadukha sukham dhiram somrutattvaya kalpate. Such a person will attain eternal life. So the whole point is tolerance is for the purpose of transcendence. We tolerate the ups and downs of life so that we can focus on Krishna and ultimately attain Krishna. But if we are tolerating something that prevents us from going toward Krishna, then that tolerance, in one sense, tolerance is meant to lead us towards transcendence. Tolerance is not meant to lead us towards impotence. Impotence means we just become powerless. We let ourselves become powerless and let others exploit and abuse us. Okay? Thank you. Any last question before we stop?
This is perhaps a continuation of one of our questions in previous classes. We have been discussing a little bit about free will and karma, and whether or not we have free will that determines our future.
Whether we have free will to?
Determine the future. Now, in one of the verses that we discussed, I think last week, it was said that God sees the past, the present, and the future in one go. And I'm struggling with that idea in the sense that if one has a free will, then can that mean, and can that be compatible with the idea that there is already a predetermined future to be seen by a God? So,
Okay, I got the question.
You've been giving me some things to think about, but I'd also like to get your view.
Yeah. Yes. This is a common philosophical paradox in theology. How does omniscience and free will go together? So the verse you are referring to is in the 7th chapter, Vedaham samatitani vartamanani cha arjuna bhavishyani cha bhutani mam tu vedana kaschana. That's 726 in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, I know past, present and future, but me no one knows. So now, the first point, let's start with, in general, one principle in understanding scripture is that every statement needs to be contextualized. So when we are, say for example, when we are studying scripture, we can absolutize every statement. This statement says that that's the absolute truth. Well, okay. But then if scripture says something different at some other place, how do we understand that? Say for example, we might hear that God knows the future. Now from a logical perspective, that means if the future is already predetermined, that's how God knows it, then we don't have free will. But the very existence of scripture presumes the existence of free will. How? Because scripture basically tells us, do this, don't do this. And if we had no free will to choose what to do and what not to do, then what is the point of telling us do this and don't do this? Isn't it? It's like wasting time telling something to someone that they can't do at all. So scripture would be pointless if we didn't have free will. Beyond that, even in our normal day-to-day circles, any system of justice, any sense of responsibility in the relationship would become meaningless if we assume that the other person didn't have free will. When we say you shouldn't have done that, now that means, you acted in a particular way, you had the capacity to act in a different way, but you acted in this way. Morality, every should statement, that indicates free will. So, I'm not going to go into the logic for explaining free will here, but in one sense it's an implicit assumption in all our actions. It's almost like an axiomatic truth. We function with the assumption that we have free will. So, when we absolutize any statement, then the problem that comes is, okay, what about other statements in scripture? Now, sometimes we may see that in scripture there seems to be statements of different kinds or even opposing kinds. One thing is said over here, another thing is said over there. And we might go to the other extreme in the pendulum, and we may relativize things. Scripture says many things, you believe whatever you want. That makes sense to you and that makes sense to me. And there's no absolute truth, it's all relative. Nowadays people say you have your truth and I have my truth. And it's all truth with a lowercase t. There's no uppercase t truth. Well, it's not that simple. Now I can come and slap you. Say, you slapped me. No, that's your truth. I didn't slap you. No, at a functional level, we need to have some objective truth by which we function. So we don't relativize everything. So the key point is contextualize. Contextualize means look in the context of what something is being said. So, in the context, if you look at the 7th chapter, when Krishna is saying, I know past, present and future, but me no one knows. Essentially, that statement, 7:26, what it means is that there is the domain of Maya. The domain of Maya is this material existence. The previous verse says, Naham Prakash Sarvasya Yoga Maya Samavrtaha. So now, in the domain of Maya are all living beings. So we are living beings over here. And say, we have a future and we have a past. So now Krishna exists, just for diagram purpose, I'm showing Krishna is smaller than Maya. Krishna is much bigger than Maya. But, but Krishna exists above Maya. And that's why what Krishna is saying is, I know past, present and future, but me no one knows. Me no one knows means while we are within the domain of Maya, we cannot understand Krishna who is beyond the domain of Maya. So the emphasis of that verse is that Krishna is beyond the domain of Maya. That we, being in the domain of the material world, we are limited. We can know only so much. Now, that's the context of that verse. Now, beyond that context was the implication. See, Krishna, when he says he's omniscient, and then he also tells us, do this, don't do this. So the point is that God's knowledge of Krishna's knowledge of the future. This can be understood at 3 different levels. At one level, it's a knowledge of causes and effects and their correlation. That means Krishna knows in the future which cause will lead to which effect. So for example, in some video games, you have what is called the God mode. God mode means what? That this player is making this choice, this player is say there's a grand auto theft or something like that. A person is chasing this car and a person is going in this direction. So now, if you are in the God mode, you can see, okay, this person is driving here. If they take this turn, they will go there. If they take that turn, they'll go there. If they take that turn, they will go there. So now that driver may not be able to see the whole path over there. They won't say, okay, there are cops over here, there are no cops over here, there are cops here. They can't see that, but you can see that. So you are outside the domain. So Krishna knows the cause-effect connection. Krishna knows which causes will lead to which effects. So in that sense, that's one sense in which you can say that's God's omniscience. That He knows which causes which will lead to which effects. Now another sense is that He even knows our inclinations. So now He knows, okay, in this particular situation, based on our past history, what are we likely to do? Now, knowing our inclinations is not the same as determining those inclinations. It is not He who has determined those inclinations, it is we who have determined them by our past actions. He knows our inclinations and therefore He knows, okay, we'll do this, we'll do that. So that's another level of understanding. The external world's choices and consequences He knows. Our inner world's inclinations also He knows. But then the Gita also says that we are not our inclinations. That means we may be inclined to make a particular choice, but we don't have to make that choice. We could make a different choice also. Now a third level is That God's omniscience means that it is information without intervention. So basically, in this reading, God's Krishna knowledge of the future is like our knowledge of the past. Now, our knowledge of the past means, I know, say today morning I wanted to wake up at 3 o'clock, but I woke up at 4 o'clock. So, I know that, but I can't change it. Now, in the case of God, He can change it, but He doesn't change it. So, He respects our free will. But it is information without intervention. He is not controlling it. So, if somebody exists outside the time domain, then what is happening in the time domain is perceivable for God. Like a person from outside can see, okay, this is going to lead to this is going to lead to this. But that person is not controlling it. But beyond all these, these three levels of explanation of God's omniscience are there. But beyond all this, the key principle is reciprocation of love. That means, say, if somebody loves a particular movie very much, now if there's a particular scene in the movie they love, then they know what that person is going to speak and how that person is going to react, but still they keep replaying that clip or reel because they just enjoy that scene so much. So in that case, it's not so much knowing is important as relishing, isn't it? In reciprocation of love, there's knowing and there's relishing. And relishing is much, much more important. It is much greater. So, say if a child has done something funny and we tell it to our friends and colleagues. So when we tell it to them, it's that we know what has been happened, but still we love talking about it because there's love. So even if we assume that God knows our future choices, then that means He knows our future choices, but still, if we are making those choices out of love, that pleases Krishna. So for example, say tomorrow, maybe anger is going to hit me. And I am going to collapse because of the anger. I am going to yell at someone. I am going to do something terrible. Maybe that is determined. But if today I am praying to Krishna, if I am trying to call out Krishna, I have this conditioning of anger. I don't want to succumb to it. I may fall. But because I have prayed to Krishna, I will be falling not downward but upward. That means because of that anger or because of my awareness of that anger, that intensified my devotion. And although the behavior went in that way, the behavior went downward, the overall disposition went upwards. I called out to Krishna more, I became more dependent on Krishna, and I connected more with Him. So love is never a function of mechanics. Mechanical aspects are there in any loving relationship, but love goes beyond mechanics. So even if, say, particular actions are destined not only to happen to us, but they are happen through us. Say we are going to make mistakes, but what we do before that will please Krishna. So that's why when it comes to relishing, so there is heart, and then there is the body-mind machine. By heart I mean essentially the soul, the locus of our free will. So I may, for example, if I sit down to chant, my mind may wander. And I know my mind is going to wander, and I can't help it, just wanders off. But before that, if I have prayed, Krishna, I really want to focus on you. Then when my mind wanders, as soon as I become aware, I try to get it back. It wanders again, I try to get it back. So we could say that, in our devotion, what matters? Say our attention matters. Our attention matters, no doubt. But more than that, we could say our emotion also matters. Emotion means, let's say sometimes I'm chanting Krishna, then I'm feeling bored. But when I'm feeling bored, Do I welcome that feeling and use that as an excuse to stop chanting? Or I pray, Krishna, you are manifesting as the holy name. I don't want to feel bored. So maybe our distraction is destined. But our emotion is up to us. Krishna, I don't want to feel bored. So that's something which is up to us. You say, even emotion is coming up. I'm just feeling so bored. I can't do anything about it. But what was my intention? I start with the intention. I am going to chant very attentively today. So even that intention is pleasing to Krishna. So all three are pleasing to Krishna. So we could say intention is most the function of the soul. Attention is more a function of the mind. So the domain of the free will is there at the level of the soul. Now I may not be able to act out my intention. And that's why there is the concept of Manas Puja. That sometimes you will not be able to do something physically, but at least aspire to do it, long to do it. That is also pleasing to Krishna. So in terms, if we can go beyond this, simply at a logical level debating this issue, bhakti is not just logical, it is psychological. It is beyond psychological, it is a matter of the heart. So whether God knows the future or not doesn't change the fact that we can improve our future. Maybe the experiences maybe the events that happen in our life will be fixed. But how we experience those events will be different. So that is ultimately up to us. That is not controlled by God. So yes, maybe tomorrow we are going to meet with an accident. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe we are going to meet with an accident. But if we are prayerful and devotional today, then that accident will not shock us so much because we will be spiritually stronger. So we can say that events and experiences. Experiences means how do I experience the event? The events may be destined, but the experiences are not destined. That's up to us. And therefore, the idea of God knowing the future and we having free will, they are not irreconcilable. Now what exactly, I gave multiple explanations, which exactly will play out when? That we don't know. But the principle is that we do have free will. And if we use our free will better, we can create a better future for ourselves. Now would that better future mean that the events will remain the same but the experiences will be better? Or will that mean also the events will be better? Well, that is better left to God. Okay? So, thank you very much. Srimad. Yeah.